Hey, this is Will from Teenage Engineering. I'm here with my friends from Guitar Center at the Vintage Synth Museum in Los Angeles, California. And we're very excited to show you the new K.O. K.O. is the spiritual successor to EP-133 K.O, the Pocket Operator and one of the most popular samplers of all time. K.O. features 12 velocity and pressure-sensitive pads for holding samples, as well as 4 group pads, with each group holding 12 different samples. You can transpose, arrange, sequence, and live record any of the pads. Each pad can be set to a different MIDI channel, allowing you to use the MIDI in and out to control and sequence external gear. Sync in and out can be used to control both the K.O. as well as external gear, such as drum machines, Eurorack modules, and synthesizers. USB can be used for MIDI, data transfer, and power. Use sampling on the device through the built-in mic or the line-in, as well as chopping whatever you've sampled to quickly and easily make a beat. K.O. has 6 built-in effects to choose from for your master effects bus. Choose from delay, reverb, distortion, chorus, filter, or compressor. All of those specs aside, this has been designed to be fast and fun and help you make a beat as quickly as you can. It's both a sketchpad and a music production machine. Let's get to making a beat. Before we got started, I recorded a little line on the Fender Rhodes, adding a little bit of soft clipping to add some distortion and character. So now we're going to jump into the sample mode. You'll see the pads start blinking to let you know, hey, I'm ready to sample. If you use plus and minus, you can step between stereo, just the left channel, the center channel, or the right channel. Here, the audio was actually just recorded to the left channel, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit play on the TP7 and then record on the K.O. So now we've got that sampled into the K.O. If I hit Shift and Sample, it'll bring us into Chop. It'll play the sample again, and then we can start cutting it up into whatever sections we like. K.O. will play the sample through, allowing you to hear it and start chopping from a specific point. If we wait until the end of the sample, then we can take it from the start and chop from there. Let's try it out. Okay, so now we've got some chops and we've got some samples and we can start recording something into the beat. So if I hit record and then play, it'll give us a 4-beat count in. I've set the length to 4, but here if you use plus or minus, you can set the length to be bigger or smaller. K.O. quantizes everything that comes into the device as you're recording. That means that anything you play, even if you play it off time, will snap to the grid. If you want to play something that is slightly free or out of the grid, you can go into timing and set it to free mode using plus, or quantize with minus. If we hit Shift and Main, that'll commit what we've created and move on to the next section, creating 2 deliberate sections. So now we can add something in and build our track. So now we're going to add some drums. If I go into group B, I'm going to get rid of this guy. We're going to use some of the sounds built into the device. In K.O. you get 3 main menus. Sound, which is where you load up your sounds. Main, where you arrange those sounds. And tempo, where you can set the tempo and play about with time signatures. Let's jump into sound and load it up with some of the built-in sounds. So here, you can step through using plus or minus the different sounds. Let's find a kick drum that we like, and we can use it to start recording. So I like the sound of this kick drum. Let's find a snare drum that's maybe a bit more interesting. So now if we go up in 10, we can get up to the snare drums really quickly. Yeah, that one's a cool one. I like that. Okay, now let's find a hi-hat. Again, stepping up in 10s. It's nice. Maybe we can do a variation on that. Okay. And now I've got this one in mind. It's number 145. So if I hold down sound, I can actually type that value in, and it will jump to that point in the samples. Cool. So now we have some drums. We can hop back into main and start recording them. I'm going to set our length again up to 4, and that'll allow us to take a 4-bar recording. Great, so now we have some drums. Now hit Shift and Main to commit again, and we have another distinct section. So now we've got some drums, we've got a sample. Let's add some sort of melody on top and keep it moving. I'm going to jump into Group D and then into Sound Mode and select a sample. There we go, I like that. Let's see what we can do with it. So if I hit Keys after selecting that sample, it will launch us into a chromatic keys mode. You can set the scale of that in System Settings. I've currently got it set to minor, but if I go into Settings, you can go Pad, Scale, and then choose between any of the following, and you can see them all listed out. For this project, I'm going to set it to minor. Let's try it out with our beat. That's nice. I'm going to step us back to the start of the pattern by hitting Shift and minus until we reach 1.1.1. Cool, that sounds great. Let's add some effects. So if you press Effects, that'll launch you into the effects mode, where you can pick your send effect. So here I want to add some reverb, get it a bit washier and bigger in the song. So we'll go to Group A, and the fader will default to FX Send. We can then turn it up and add reverb to that sound. Let's hear it. Cool, I'm going to add some to that Group D as well, that melodic sound. You can change the color with Y or the length with X. Cool, now that we've added some effects, let's use some of the punch-in effects to perform with our beat. These punch-in effects are pressure sensitive, so the harder you press, the more accentuated that punch-in effect gets. Great. So we've got a beat together. Now we can use those scenes that we created whilst committing throughout the creation of our beat to play back the beat and perform it. So starting from scene 1, I can now press through using plus and minus to step up through those scenes and reach our final finished scene. And that's how you make a beat from scratch. So we've done some live recording. Let's learn about sequencing on KO2 and see how powerful it is. So of course, we're at the Vintage Synth Museum. There's lots of choice in terms of vintage synths, Prophet 5s, CS80s, Jupiter 8s. But honestly, none of that would have fit on the table. So we went for a TR-707, a Yamaha DX100, and a BG's Rhythm Machine by Mattel. So I'm going to start off with the TR-707. We've got it plugged in using the MIDI out on KO2. Now to make use of this, the TR-707 has a mode where you can control it with MIDI. So we're going to set one of the pads as a MIDI channel and then use the keys mode to control the TR-707 and sequence it on our KO2. So first of all, let's start a new project. If I go to main, we can select from 9 different projects, 1 to 9. So if I hold down 9 in this case, we're going to open up project 9. It's a fresh project, and we can start from scratch. So I'm going to select a pad. If we go into sound mode, then press Shift Sound, that will bring us into sound edit mode. Now we can step between sound, trim, envelope, time stretch, and MIDI. MIDI is what we want. So if we turn up our X knob, we can select the MIDI channel, and we're going to set it to MIDI channel 10, because that's what our TR-707 is listening for MIDI from. So now, if we jump back into main, that pad, if we hit keys mode, will allow us to control the sounds on the TR-707. So we can hear these bottom ones. One of them is being picked up, so obviously we need to step down the octave to find those notes. So I'll hold down keys, and then plus and minus will be our octave select. Great, so we've got some sounds. Let's sequence them. KO2 works on a per-step sequence basis. So what that means is that instead of looking at a whole bunch of sounds across a 1-bar section, we're looking at one step, but with all of the sounds, or even with one sound and all of the notes in that sound. So let's step back to 1.1.1, using plus and minus, that's where you control your steps. So 1.1.1, that's our first step. So if we go into timing, we can actually set exactly the note division that we want. We'll play about with that a bit later, but for now I've got it set to 1/16. So that's 16 steps per bar. So I'm going to put down a 4 on the floor, I'm going to improvise and see what we get. So if you hold down record and then press a note on a step, that will record that note or that pad to that particular step. So here I'm going to add a kick drum to 1.1.1. Now I'm going to step through to 1.1.3, that's your third. Add a hi-hat. 1-2-1. Snare, that's your backbeat. Again, hi-hat. I'm going to skip the kick drum on this one, add a hi-hat, and then another snare drum. Here I've got a 4-bar loop, but obviously we've only got 1 bar worth of sequence, so I'm going to set it down to 1 using minus, and then that will loop around that 1-bar loop that we've created. Okay, let's make that a bit longer, maybe 2 length, and we'll keep going with that sequence. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, very cool. So what you saw me do there was press Shift and play, and that will actually play from the start of the pattern. So now we've got some drums recorded, let's add some bass. So I'm going to pick this one here, and I'm going to record a bass sound off of the DX100. So I'm going to hit sample, and that will take us into the sample mode. The pads will start blinking to say, hey, you can record to me. So now, because this is only coming in on the left channel, I'm going to set it to listen only to left and sample a mono sample. You'll see that icon change from stereo to mono. So now if I hold the pad, it'll wait to listen for a sound above the threshold set on the device. You can adjust that here with Y. Let's hold it down, and then I'll press play on the DX100. Cool, so we've got a bass sound recorded. Let's hit keys to transpose it. Now we've got a bass sound recorded from the DX100. If I press the pad, we can hear it back, but if we hit keys mode, it'll transpose it into a scale, and we can play it back and perform it. So I'll hit that. And actually, I want to transpose that down. So holding down keys and pressing on the pads will allow you to transpose that scale up or down. So I'm going to hit 4 to transpose it down. Of course, you can hit 5, 6, 7, or 8, and that will set it to pitch up or down by a certain number of notes. So now we've got... Let's sequence that into the machine. So again, starting from step 1.1.1, if you need to get there, just hold Shift and minus until it steps down to 1.1.1. That will bring you to the start of the pattern. We can set our pattern length, again, by pressing record and then setting it up or down. Starting off with 1.1.1, I'm just going to go... So now I'm going to sample some chords off the DX100 into the K.O. as individual samples. So there, as I was playing those sounds, you could hear that they were playing over each other. And so this is a great opportunity to use mute groups. So if I go into the sound edit mode and step past MIDI into group, the pads will blink, and then you can select all of the pads that need to be in that mute group. And so there, K.O. will play back that point in the sample, be it the start or the end, to show you exactly where you are. Seeing as that bit's maybe a little bit more complicated, or even if you just want to add something in live, of course you can combine the sequencing and the live recording. So here I'm going to start recording with the 4-beat count in and play it in. Okay. So that note there on 1, 2, 4 is slightly off. So we can cut that out and re-record it, hit erase, and the pad, it will remove it from that step. We can step back to the correct step, hit record, that pad to record it in to the correct step, and then we can... There, we can hear that it's actually in the correct place now. This one's a bit weird and funky, but let's keep going with it. So I'm going to add some reverb to this again. Maybe we can play about with the time stretch and see if we can create something cool and interesting. So again, hit Effects to jump into the Effects page. Let's have a play about and see what works. So now we've added this in, the pitch is a little bit off. I want to pitch it down. How can we do that? Well, a great way of doing it is using the fader. So if you hold down the fader button and then select any of the values from above the pads, that can be level, so the volume of the group, the pitch bend of the group, the time stretch of the group, low pass filter of that group, high pass filter of that group, FX send of the group, attack of the group, release, so that's your envelope, so how fast does it come in and how quickly does it fade out, pan of the group, tune, so that's what we're going to pick, but that's your pitching it up a certain number of semitones or down, so that's up max an octave or down max an octave, velocity and modulation. So here we're going to pick tune, and then if I turn down the fader, that will transpose it down 12. So there you'll see minus 12. So now we've got an octave lower, which means the sample will play back at half the rate. So now I'm going to add some Mattel magic using the Bee Gees Rhythm Machine. So that's some basic step sequencing on the K.O. As you can tell, it's a powerful live recorder, step sequencer, and sampler. Whether you're on the go, in the studio, on stage or in the ring, K.O. is a powerful tool for music making. If you want to learn more, head to guitarcenter.com, call one of their expert gear advisors, or stop in at your local GC.